Good morning. Good morning. If you are online, live streaming, or maybe tuning in afterwards, we're glad that you're tuning in. And we recognize there's a large community online that tunes in from all over. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Henry Nouwen, you may know his name. Henry Nouwen is a Catholic priest, wrote prolifically on matters of spiritual formation. Probably most notably, at the end of his career, gave up his kind of intellectual chair and pursuit and influence to work with disabled people in Ontario, like a beautiful testament to the power of Jesus in someone's life. He wrote prolifically. He wrote a book called Making All Things New. In that book, here's what he says. He says, the question is not simply, where does God lead me as an individual? It's not just about me who tries to do his will. That's an important question. But he says there's more. More basic and more significant is the question, where does God lead us as a people? This question requires we pay careful attention to God's guidance in our life together, and that together we search for a creative purpose. I love that. Because we're saying it's not just about you and your gifts and your story. Actually, the story of the church is when people come together and say, what is God doing amongst us at this time? What is our story? And what I love his phrase, a creative purpose. What is it? And so the question that we're going to exploring over the next 3 weeks is, what is Kamloops Alliance Church's unique contribution and call? What about us in this moment, at this time, you and me together on this journey, following Jesus? What is our unique contribution and our unique call? I want to say clearly off the top, we love every church in Kamloops that preaches the Bible, makes Jesus known in their own ways and their own liturgies and traditions. We are so for their flourishing. This is not a competition. We love and we partner with these churches. But here's the thing. I'm not at those churches. I'm at this church. And so the question is, what about us? What is our unique contribution and call? And every local church has a story. Our church began in 1944. 80 years of history. Different seasons, different leaders, different families, but 80 years. The year before we planted, here's the heartbeat of the church in which you are part of. This is a quote from the original kind of founding members. These men, telling the story of the plant, these men at very early hour of the morning would go into the hills of Kamloops to read the Bible and pray for an outpouring of God's Spirit among the people of Kamloops. So for 80 years, this church has been saying, how do we make Jesus known here? An outpouring of the Spirit, a fresh movement of the Spirit of God in Kamloops. And so for 80 years, this church has been doing and trying to do exactly that. Through different iterations, different buildings, the church began to grow and built here at this site. And in 1976, there was a hugely defining moment in the life of Kamloops Alliance Church. To this day, as far as I understand, we don't know how the fire started, but this was the remnants of the building in 1976. Just rib cages of what was a community of faith. And at that moment, it's a question, well, we've had a good run, right? It's been good. At the time, I understand they were kind of in transition with leadership, and so the temptation was, well, why don't we just kind of call it, maybe there's other churches we can go to, we had a great run, let's pack it in. But that wasn't the heartbeat of this church. Instead, they started meeting at the Henry Group Center, doing mobile church, setting up and down chairs to continue, and they built a building in which you kind of are part of different iterations a few years later. This was an enormous, pivotal moment to say, no, we still have work to do. In 1986, so just about 10 years after that, this church became debt-free and has been debt-free ever since. That is unbelievable. A testament to the faithfulness, the families, the people, believing in what God is doing in this community, and good leaders, putting money away for rainy days and spending very wisely. Another pivotal truth about this church is that it has been debt-free. This building that you're a part of has had different iterations and different things. We're going to talk about that at the end. But what has been consistently the heartbeat is that people would know Jesus and make him known all the way through our history. In 2011, under Pastor Larry, They started another campaign to build what is now the ministry center. I don't have time to get into all of the stories about what God did in order for that to happen, but we have been using that building since 2015, and it gets highly, highly, highly used. The question we want to think about is, in this moment, what is Kamloops Alliance Church's unique contribution and call? And that's what we're going to be thinking about over the next 3 weeks. I want to be clear to you. We believe that the best days of Kamloops Alliance Church are ahead of us and not behind us. We believe it. We believe it. With what he is doing in our congregation, we believe the best days are ahead. And we're inviting you and all of us, to be a part of it. So the next 3 weeks is what we're going to do. We're going to talk today about a vision for the future. Next week, we're going to talk about the people that we need to be for the future. And then the final week is to talk about, what does this look like practically with this building and for our ministries? And so, what we're going to do is we're going to look at a really foundational text that has been steering us over the last few years. We're going to look over from that text a prayerful plan that we put together, saying, God, above and beyond all we can imagine, and here's what that looks like. And then I want to introduce you to a campaign that's going to transform our building and do some cool things ministry-wise over the next 24 months. So, we're going to go to Ephesians chapter 3. If you have your Bibles, I'd welcome you into it. We're going to see 4 big things: the initiating action of the Father, the strengthening work of the Spirit, and the indwelling work of Christ. And so you have this Trinitarian shape, Father, Son, and Spirit, in this prayer. And then finally, the doxology, or the bursting out in worship that Paul does because of what he has considered about God. And so here's Ephesians chapter 3. It says, for this reason. What's the reason? Well, if you look in Ephesians chapter 3, Paul is ruminating on the mystery of the gospel that has been found out in Jesus Christ. That through the church, the manifold wisdom of God has been made known to the world. He is considering all that God has done in Jesus Christ. And he says, for that reason, what does he do? He kneels. He physically kneels. He gets on his knees in front of God. For this reason, I kneel. This is a posture of submission, of reverence. If I was to wash your feet, this is how I would do it. For this reason, I kneel. What Paul does is he takes physical posture and his prayer life, and he brings it together. That there's something about the mystery of God in Jesus Christ that brings this educated man to his knees in prayer. And so the question I was asking myself this week, when was the last time I knelt before God? When was the last time that the message of all that has happened and accomplished in Jesus Christ done something to me in such a way that I get down, my knees are burning right now, and it's so uncomfortable, that it's made me take a physical posture before God? When was the last time we knelt before God? If nothing else, what I hope happens in our church, more than a renovated space, that your heart would be renovated to the point where you do something like this. Not because you have to, but because it's the only response to God. For this reason, I kneel. I'm going to stand up now because I'm hurting. But I think that is so challenging for us put together proper Canadians to actually humble yourself before God Almighty. He kneels. This is a prayer from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. What Paul is praying and what he's attributing to the Father is the Father's creative acts. That if the genealogy of the world, if you care to map it out, Ancestry.com, you're looking at the genealogies that all of these people have their origination in God, the creative act of God. That he creates, and out of his creation comes humanity and families and people. And this is what Paul is praying. The reason why he is kneeling before this God is because of his power and his might. And he says, I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being. That out of the troves, the glorious riches, the treasury that God has, the Spirit will take some of that and apply it to your life. Hope, peace, gentleness. What you need, God has, and he has more than enough. And so it's from the treasury of God that the Spirit, what we say, appropriates or brings these things to your life. It's that moment that you need hope where the word of hope is given. This is the Spirit bringing you and introducing you to all of the resources in God, namely that is in Jesus Christ. The Father is creating, the Spirit is appropriating, he is strengthening you with power in your inner being. Why? So that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. That the Father, Son, and Spirit here are working together to introduce you and reintroduce you to Jesus Christ. It says, and I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, rooted and established, firmly planted in life and in love. I was listening to a podcast a while ago, and the podcast host said like a little line. It wasn't even like the point of the podcast. He just said, I define myself as one so radically loved by God. And I was like, I don't think I define myself like that. It struck me. I define myself by a lot of other things. And I think I would say, yes, that God loves me. I mean, that's what he does, isn't it? But I had this deep inner feeling that like God kind of puts up with me. But does he actually love me? And if that's true, is it the only thing, or maybe not the first thing that I would say about myself, that I am one radically loved by God? And so my prayer, this was a long time ago, my prayer is like, Jesus, help me redefine myself as one radically loved by God, where I have nothing to lose and I have nothing to prove. And things come and go, opinions come and go, this comes and goes, but at the end of the day, I can look in the mirror and say, Chris, you are loved by God Almighty. And this is being rooted and established in that fact about who you are, that the truest thing about yourself today is that you are one radically loved by God. Listen to me, he doesn't put up with you, he loves you. This is the prayer that Paul is praying. And he says, as we discover this, rooted and grounded in love, that we may have power, how? Together with all the Lord's holy people. Together. That as we follow Jesus together, we will be able to grasp in increasing and more ways than you would on your own what is the height and breadth and love of God for you. This is a qualifier that I think we blow past, that together we discover this. And so the idea that you can somehow follow Jesus in your isolated bubble without knowing anybody else is more of a product of your Western individualism than it is about the biblical witness about being a follower of Jesus. You have constructed something outside of the words of this book, hoping to experience and increase the love of God. But Paul is coming and correcting and saying, actually, it's through each other that you're going to be able to grasp it. It's actually in this community of faith where you will be able to understand what? How wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. And to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of the fullness of God. In the original language, it's like filling and filling and filling and filling. Filled to fullness on repeat. That we would have powerful, rooted, grounded, full lives. This is the prayer that Paul is praying. And because of these things, he starts to erupt in what's called doxology or worship. And he says, now to him, because of these things, who is able to do immeasurably more. In one translation of the Bible in the NASB, the North American Standard Bible, I think. That sounds about right. You can check it out later. He says, beyond all. Beyond all. Now to him who is able to do beyond all than all we ask or imagine. This is where we get the language from our strategic plan and our prayerful posture towards the future. Above and beyond all. In other words, now to the God who is able to exceed your expectations. Yes, even your wildest expectations. To the one who has the treasures of God, he is able to do above and beyond all we can ask or imagine. And so this week in your journals, as you are apprenticing Jesus, I want you to write down something. Above and beyond all, colon. And I want you to sit with that and ask God, how have you done above and beyond all in my life? Be specific. You surprised me when this happened. So, it's my birthday today. Yeah. And I just want to say I've done a lot in my life for 25. I've just done, the Lord has blessed me. Oh, thanks, Sandra. Happy birthday. Thank you. That's so sweet. So today is like one of those days where you're kind of like, oh my gosh, like I'm 25 again. Like how does this, man, the years go fast, you know? As I think back on my story and on my life, there have been moments where my expectations have been exceeded over and over and over again. Listen to me, if I pay attention. Because it's so easy to fast forward through life with a grumpy, ungrateful attitude. But if you actually take a second to ask the question, where have you done above and beyond all? I think, I won't get into it, but my life, it's a testament to the gracious goodness of God. I'm so grateful. But for you, as you think back on your story above and beyond all, for you, it may be the fact that, man, your family just does that. It's just been a part of your family's history. It's a sin pattern, a generational thing that our families just do these things. Everybody gets divorced. Everybody's an alcoholic. Everybody is a gambler. We just do that. And every generation, that just seems to happen. But God delivered you from that pattern above and beyond all you could ask or imagine. For my friends in here who walk each day in purity before the Lord after a decades-long addiction to pornography, he released me from the vomit that I was eating. Above and beyond all you can ask or imagine. Some of your stories that it was actually through your cancer or your diagnosis or your health crisis where your faith actually began to grow. And you look back and you're like, I would never choose it. And it wasn't given by him, but man, in the middle of it is when he did above and beyond all I can ask or imagine. For some people in this room who went through the season of infertility, and you are sitting today either with your child or your child is at KC Kids, and you're like, I never would have thought this was possible because everybody in the medical community said it wasn't. Above and beyond all we can ask or imagine. For some of our dear primetimers who have lost spouses, 40, 50, 60-year marriages, and it is actually through this season of your life where you can say that although through the pain and grief and loss that you have felt a comfort that it surpasses knowledge, above and beyond all. What is your above and beyond all story? This is the heartbeat of our church. And so he says, all we can ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us, to him be glory in the church, in KAC, and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. And we say, amen. Amen. This is the text that has gripped us here as leaders, and as a church. Above and beyond all that is true and good of what Jesus has done for us, here's now our creative response. And so out of the pandemic, we came up with a strategic plan. It was called the Beyond All Plan. And we, in all different stratas of our church, leaders and congregants and elders and people, and we all came up. It was a months-long process with what we felt was the best plan that we could come up with. Is it imperfect? Absolutely. Are we going to do all things on it? Probably not. But it was the best plan that we could come up with as we felt inspired by the Holy Spirit to move forward. You need to know, as a church leader, there's a million things, good things to do. But what is our unique contribution and our unique call? And so this is what we came up with. And these are the different areas of highlight or spotlight that we came up with, and attached to each one were prayer-filled, faith-filled, beyond all statements. Here's what it would look like if God did above and beyond all in this area. Here's what we're praying for. What does renewal look like in our church? What does renewal look like in our city? And so we came together, and some of them now, like 2 years later, we're like, oh, that wasn't really that prayer-filled at all because God's done it. Or some of them are like, well, actually, we're not going to focus in on that. And there's other areas that we had no idea that the Lord has surprised us. And so what I want to do is I want to go through a few of these highlights in our strategic plan. You can see all of this on our website if you're more interested. One of them was we wanted to see a 15% increase in our general fund giving because, oh my goodness, how are we going to see all these things happen? Generosity needs to come. And so we had 15% over, like, it wasn't actually that much now that I look back, but last year alone, we had a 10% increase in our general fund. That's absolutely insane. That's an insane increase of generosity flowing from you as we are following Jesus together. One of the things in our strategic plan was biblical counseling. We, as a church, wanted to get better in small group care, both with life groups, yes, but also like one-on-one. As a church, as leaders, we do well in kind of big gatherings like this, but we wanted to increase our care and our love one-on-one. And so Sandra Bauhaus is on our staff. She's been taking biblical counseling. We have 2 other kind of apprentices now taking biblical counseling in our community to provide biblical counseling one-on-one for free. So this has been happening now for a few years, and through this ministry, we have seen 40 people, 40 different clients come in one-on-one, some a one-off, others long-term type relationship. Out of this ministry, 2 people have given their lives to follow Jesus through the ministry of our biblical counseling, like in the session, saying, I need to do this. And this has been a ministry that we've been able to provide, yes, for our people, but also for the community and other Christians in our churches that maybe don't feel comfortable in that spot to come here. This is an area that we did not know was going to grow like this, and we are very excited about it. Are you? I think it's cool. I mean, you're just like, there's a football game on. You need to get me to the football game. The next one is we, as a church, wanted to, again, increase kind of small group connection. We think rows are awesome, but circles are better. Rows are great. circles are better because you get to know people and you get to be known in those. And so we wanted to increase the amount of people in our life groups, like percentage-wise, but also the amount of life groups. And so we prayed every year we would see 10 life groups, new life groups launch. And so that may seem easy, but it's not, because you need new leaders and you need multiplication to happen in groups and you need people to open up their homes and all of these things. And so I've said this to you before, but we are in November, and already in this ministry calendar year since September, we've launched 11 new life groups. It's remarkable. It's so great. Almost 100 new people in our life groups in the last few months. It's a remarkable story of beyond all that we just did not think possible. Finally, one of the things on our strategic plan was we thought, how do we reach new people? Missiologists, those are the nerds who study God's movement in different areas. Missiologists, I say that as a term of endearment. Like, these are good people. Okay? I'm not trying to be insulting. What missiologists say, generally, is that long-term movements of decades long, generally what happens is that they will not experience revitalization. It's missiology. They just say long-term movements generally start to fade away, and what comes is a new movement, and new movements continue up. So you kind of have this cascading, like older churches, older movements die, and then new ones are replaced, and that's kind of how it works, and that's fine. But think about that reality for us here at KAC. We're 80 years. Technically, statistically, this would be this descending kind of graph and we should just replant the church. That is some wisdom when it comes to missiology. And we're like, no, we believe actually that the best days are ahead of us. And so the question was, how do we reach new people? How do we go to places where we're not currently going? And so that has led us to Sun Peaks. And I've been going to Sun Peaks for 5 years, every 5 or 6 weeks, sometimes by myself, sometimes with some of our senior leaders, praying, planning, where are we going as a church? And so for 5 years, I've been praying for Sun Peaks Community Church to happen. And next week, it starts. It's wonderful. Phil, why don't you come on up? Phil is our leader up at Sun Peaks. He's doing such a great job. I wanted to bring Phil up here to kind of get you in the loop as far as what is going on up at Sun Peaks. Phil, tell us what you want to, vision, kind of what have you learned? You kind of doing this for a few months. What's the vision? What's the heartbeat of Sun Peaks Community Church?
One thing I've learned is that I like to get ahead of God. And I've been reminded time and time again just to slow down and join what he is doing. So I'm extremely humbled that God chooses people like us to come alongside him. And so that's exciting. So our vision for Sun Peaks Church is just to be a light in the community. There is lots of locals there. There's lots of seasonal staff that come and go. The seasonal staff are away from their homes, and they might have a religious expression at home that they would participate in. And we want to provide a place that they will feel safe and join us. There's lots of locals up there that haven't gone to church in a while because it's too far away. So having something local and accessible for people is kind of what we're hoping to set up.
Awesome. Tell us what kind of the heartbeat for Alpha and kind of those types of ministries too up there.
Yeah, we have, it ties into actually our facility that we landed.
Yeah.
But we hope to host an Alpha at the end of January for locals. And we also are going to be doing the traditional Christmas Eve service up there. So please join us if you can make it.
Awesome. Fantastic. A few weeks ago, I stood before you and I was like, hey, we need to pray for a location because we're planting a church without a building, which is hard. And so I stood before and I was like, hey, we need to pray. And then a few weeks ago, I can't remember the timeline, but I was like, hey, we found something. And so I wanted Phil to share the story because as we talk about beyond all, immeasurably more than we ask, this is one of them as a corporate kind of story of us together. So why don't you share kind of how that all played out?
Yeah, this goes back to me trying to get ahead of God. I was pounding the pavement, checking out every kind of meeting room in every hotel that was up in the hill, and I wasn't getting a lot of long-term positive feedback. It was, yeah, you can rent for once here and once there, and we'd be jumping around. So time was getting short, and we decided to call the people that were interested up there into a day of prayer and fasting for a venue. And 2 days later, we were not only led to the place, but received an email saying, we would love to host your group. And looking through the facility, it's actually beyond all we could ask or imagine. So we have the option to provide food and to host a group of various sizes. So that ties into our Alpha potentially. Yeah, and it's a long-term commitment. There is nobody else needing the space, so we don't have to share. It's for us.
Amazing.
Yeah, praise God.
Amazing.
Sure.
Cool. Phil, how can people get involved if they want more information? Let me show you when it's starting. We had about half the church after the first service tell us that I had. So this is like imperfect. I'm very imperfect. But it says December 17th. It's not starting. It's actually November. Okay,
there we go.
If anybody shows up, it's next week. Both Phil and I yesterday, like the first service, like, yeah, come in. Everyone's like, wait, is it December, November? It is November 17th. Tell people how they can get more information, where it is, kind of what you need as you think about launch next week.
Yeah, we do have a sub-page on the KAC website. We also, you can email me, philk@kac.ca. I'll be hanging out in the foyer after too if you have any questions. But yeah, if you're in the area, next weekend is actually the projected opening weekend for the ski hill. So come ski and then come in your snow gear to church.
Pretty rad, man.
Yeah,
that's a great
cool.
deal. That's a great deal.
Yeah.
Why don't you give a round of applause for Phil and what he's doing up at Sun Peaks? Oh boy. So, two things. Planting a church in Canada is really hard. It's really, really hard. And so, church, give to this. Pray for this. If you can, go to this. Commit yourself to making this a community that is vibrant and growing and making disciples. This is, secondly, we are modeling as a church courageous faith for you. You see that? Like it's way easier to not do this. Believe me. It's way easier. But we feel compelled, and the mission of God is driving us forward. And because of this faith, we now have a corporate faith story of how Jesus has provided a space for us. And in the same way, as you have risky faith, and you step out, and your heart is beating, and you're not sure how it's gonna work out, and you introduce or invite your friend to Christmas Eve, or you step out and you give more, or whatever it is, these are the faith stories available for the God who can do immeasurably more, but we drastically underestimate exactly what he can do, and instead, we live controlled and powerless lives. So join us as we step into things like this. Okay, the prayerful plan. Thirdly, and finally, the campaign. A part of our strategic plan was to also renovate our space, this physical building, for present and future ministry. And so I want to go through a lot of work that we put into this. Like I've been meeting with the steering team, even before that with our board chair and other key leaders for like 18 plus months on this. And so what I'm about to present to you when we think about this physical space has been well thought through. It has been vetted by professionals. We have gone to the city of Kamloops. We have gone and done the work. And so what I want to bring you through is now kind of the next 24 months of a part, not all, but a part of the life of our church. There's 10 projects. Let me go through a map, okay, so you can kind of see what we are going to do as we think about the campaign. The first one here is renovate the gymnasium into a multi-space place for expanded ministry. So the gym is down here. Yes, we will continue to use it for recreational things, both for our internal user groups and also external. The Aboriginal Friendship Society youth group uses our gym. We think that's a win. And we don't want to lose that. But what we want to do is expand that space for conferences, for banquets, for the prime time sort of banquets that's going to be held here in a few weeks. We need to do some things in order to make that an inviting space. It's still going to be recreational, but there's going to be an expanded use for other things. Our KAC Kids ministry meets there right now, and it needs some improvement in order to disciple well. The second one is updating Rivers Cafe to create a more welcoming, hospitable space. That's up here, Rivers Cafe. I want you to think like Starbucks. Right now, it's Starbucks-ish, but it needs more attention. This is a place and a space where we want to highlight hospitality, some good food, some better coffee, a place where you can go and enjoy and sit down. It's going to be widened so that we have more space in there and expanded for those purposes. Hospitality is a key part of our strategic plan, and we want to continue. So we're going to be moving around a lot of things there. Number 3, updating the foyer and sanctuary to minimize sound transfer and increase natural light. So the foyer, this green space, needs some improvement. If you are there outside, it's super loud. We're going to increase sound baffling so it's easier to have conversation. Also, and if this is the only church you've ever gone to, or it's been a long time since you attended another church, coming into this space is a little like coming into a tomb because there's no natural light, okay? And so what we want to do is we're going to put windows behind you so there's some more natural light and people out there can see into our space. And so that's going to be a part of it. We're going to have new flooring, it's going to look and feel way better than what it does right now. Number 4, providing more breakout on small group spaces for ministry and community use. And so there's a bunch of them. 1, 2, 3, and then also here 4. The fireside room is also another place. And so if you just come on Sundays, you're like, hey, this is kind of a busy place. You have not come through the week. This building is used all the time, both by our own groups and other community groups as well. And the cry of our staff and the cry of our people is we need more places to meet. Bible studies, meetings, confidentiality, all of these things in these places. So one of them I want to highlight here is the prayer room. And so just to my right here, if you've ever seen a first aid room, nobody has used that first aid room. Since basically I got here. Nobody has used it. And so we're going to transform that place into, on Sundays, a prayer room. And also through the week, a breakout room for other ministry. Now, for some of you, you're like, what if I have a heart attack? There's no first aid. Don't worry. We'll still have care, but just not a dedicated room for that. And so we're going to have all of these places, including a space here for Sandra and her team for biblical counseling that's actually appropriate and welcoming for this type of ministry. That's the 4th one. 5, building a dedicated studio for recording and podcasts, editing, teaching content. So this is a big one. This is the gym. In the gym, if you've been to the gym and you're looking at the stage, that stage also is not used. And so what we're doing is we're actually going to put 2 levels in the stage. We're going to take out the stage. The bottom level is going to be a space for storage. The top level is going to be a place for a studio. So we're thinking about like music content and podcasting and teaching. And we believe this is a strength of our church, both in music and content and teaching and Bible study that we want to share with the world. And in our current age, this communication is super important and super effective. Right now, we have no dedicated space for this, and so that is going to be a huge, huge thing for us moving forward, is that studio location. Number 6 is upgrading the ministry center entrance to create a more welcoming place for guests. And so this is over here. If you've ever been to our ministry center during the week, when the ministry center was built, they did the best they could, and so they put a buzzer to get into the offices. Then you either take the stairs up or the elevator. We have found that to be a really, really cold entrance into a church, especially for community care people. So our community care ministry serves people every single week who probably have never stepped foot into our church, are coming with a high degree of need and a high degree, oftentimes, of shame. And they are met with a very cold and corporate welcome. They come into the building. They do not know where to go. We have UPS drivers who are lost, wondering where our offices are all the time. And so we want to redo this by actually being able to walk into our space without the buzzer, being able to take the elevator up or the stairs without the buzzer experience. And as we want to love Indigenous people, interestingly, our old friend Norm McCallum, who has passed away, when we started to on the journey to love Indigenous people, one of the first things he said to me was, Chris, if you want to love Indigenous people, the way that people enter this church has to change. Because he's like, that's not my people. They want warmth, they want relationship, and this is not that. And so that's a part of this, is to change the way that people enter midweek through our ministry center. Redesigning the office space to include more open seating. So this is the second level of the ministry center here. We have, again, these are good problems. We have way too many people and way too little space for offices. This is both paid and unpaid. And so we are looking to revamp all of that upstairs space in order to have places for key volunteers to come in and have a place to work midweek, as well as our staff. And so there's a whole lot of work going on right now about how we redesign our offices to have more places for people to work. All right. We're coming down to it here. Expanding and redesigning KC Kids. And so this is a growth edge for our church, here at KC Kids Wing. And so this area sees so much traffic. If you don't have kids, you don't know the chaos that is behind me as people pick up and drop off their kids. And so we're going to redesign that so it's way better. I will also say, too, if you are new to our church with kids, it's a really strange experience coming in, because you don't really know where to go. And it's a little creepy because it's like, hey, come follow us. We're going to go all the way over here. It's like we want to have way better wayfinding for our new families, way better expanded places for our people and our families. And so that's a big part of this. Applying new siding to protect our existing building. So part of this is stewardship of this building and also HVAC upgrades so I don't sweat as much when I preach. I'm just kidding. That's maybe part of it, but there's a lot more. So the last two parts are actually just like management of this great gift that God's given us, this building in which thousands of people have come through. If you've ever owned anything, you know that it takes upkeep. Whether that's a car, you need oil changes, or whether that's a house, you need new roofs sometimes. So those last two projects are actually just good stewardship of this amazing gift that God has given us here that we need to pay attention to, because if we don't, guess what? It gets more costly if we ignore it. And so these are the things that we are praying for as we think about this campaign. So all of this, so it's a 24-month campaign. We're starting it in December, 2 years of kind of focusing in on these 10 projects. And the cost, as we have estimated, it's about $2.9 million for this. Now, if this is your first time in our church, you're like, this is really awkward. I get it, okay? It can be awkward. But as we're talking about the corporate story of our church, this is something that we feel is super important to reach more people, to affect more people, to meet more people. And so that $2.9 million, it depends on how you receive that depends on a lot. I understand that. There are maybe smaller churches where that is insane, or smaller community, that's an insane ask, or family of origin, or socioeconomic bracket that you're in, or whatever that is. There's also some people who look at that number and that's like, oh my gosh, that's only 2.5 houses in Kamloops right now. There's a whole bunch of different ways that we receive that, and we want to be sensitive to all of those things. But as a leadership, we feel confident that this is a faith-filled step, but it's not an insane ask. I know of churches that have been in campaigns like this for 7 years, and it's like the black hole of energy and talk and resources, and we don't want to do that. The current life cycle of our church, I don't think that's a wise expenditure of our time or our resources. So we feel this is a conservative, but it is a faith-filled budget in order to meet new people and expand our ministries and also take care of the great asset that is this building. And so I want to invite you into a few things, how to participate. Number one, pray. As we've been telling you to pray since we've started our strategic plan, Ephesians 3:20 is above and beyond all we can ask or imagine. So set an alarm on your phone or on your watch, and at 3:20 in your meetings or at your home, you stop and you pray. So my watch goes off every weekday at 3:20, and I just say, above and beyond all for our KC kids, above and beyond all for our prime time, above and beyond all for our elders, above and beyond all. Jesus, would you make yourself known to them in this moment? So pray with us, because it will drive us into our future. Pledge. To pledge means over the next 24 months, this is what I think we'll be able to give as a family, what we will be able to contribute to this campaign as an individual. And so there's pledge cards. I'll go over that in a second. There's pledge cards out there that you can get a hold of. But over the next 24 months, what does it reasonably look like for you to pledge in generosity towards this? And then also, you can give right now. We have the Beyond All Fund. It's already set up on our online giving. You can give today to that fund and then participate. What I mean by that is participate not just at this campaign. Please do that, but it's also more. And the question is, what kind of a church do you want to be a part of? What kind of a church do you want to be a part of? And the haunting question is, if every single person in our church were as committed to you, to our church, what kind of a church would we be? Think about that question. If everybody in our church was exactly like you in your commitment level and all that sort of stuff, in many different ways, what kind of a church would we be a part of? I just want to say, what kind of a church? I mean, I can come up here and do all these things, but at the end of the day, you're going to go home, you're going to act on what kind of a church you want to be a part of. And so I would just say participate. Not equal gifts, but equal sacrifice. If we all share this together, it's the power of a shared vision. So you probably have questions. I hope you do. That's really blurry. I don't know what happened. KC.ca/stewardship. And then there's a Beyond All table just over there on my left. There's great people. If you want a tour of the building, for these projects, we can do that after this as well. We're going to be talking about this through the next few weeks as well. So if you have more questions, please continue to come. So what? I want to show you something. In this tube is a treasure map for the treasure under Kamloops Alliance. I'm just kidding. It's not a treasure map. But what it is one of the original manuscripts of the book of Ephesians. It is not that either. I'm just kidding. This is actually what it is. So what this is, actually, I got some of our team to bring out the original drawings of this building in 1976. So it smells old. It smells old. And this is the original kind of like faith-filled space that was built. And so on here, they had like 19 classrooms in this space. Right behind me, actually, was a huge choir room, the pastor's offices, the gym. This reflected their needs at the time. 1976. And they probably looked at this and gulped, how are we going to make this happen? What does this look like? And the building has gone through many iterations. Like, we no longer have a choir room, right? The pastor's offices aren't behind me. They're actually over in the ministry center now. And so this building has morphed and changed because of the people in it. And so it is right now. So whenever I do math, you should be very, very skeptical because I'm terrible at it. But I did check it over. Last year, like alone in this room, not different people, but we had over 45,000 people through this room last year. In the top peak ministry times of our year, we have 1,300 people through our building every single week. This is a huge gift that God has given. And what's made this church go is not the physical space, but the people. The people, the leaders, the pastors, the families who have taken ownership to say, this is our story and it matters. And so what I want to welcome you into is, I don't know how this lands with you, maybe it doesn't, but I want to invite you into not the idea of not just renovated space, but renovated hearts, renovated families, renovated lives. That in your inner being, as Paul prayed, that this work would happen. And I've seen Jesus use campaigns like this to drastically challenge the comfort level of people within the church. And so what I'm praying is, Jesus, I just don't want like new stuff. What I want is, I want a new heart. I want a new church. I want a new people. I want a renewed people, more passionate, more hungry. And so what we do is we center our story, our corporate story. Our creative response is great. But the reason we can respond is because we receive. We receive the goodness of Jesus found in his life, death, burial, and resurrection. So this is our community moment where we plant our flag again of the people that we want to be. Open, hungry, Spirit-filled.